Hello, and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Monday, the 17th of April. I can't believe how quickly this year is flying by. On Friday morning, when I was saying my daily office, I used this book called Common Prayer, a liturgy for ordinary radicals. They had this quote here. Talks about different radical people who have done something through the ages that has been radical, have been different. Who they talk about saints and people who citizens who have stepped out to change the world in tiny little ways and big ways. And in this case, they're talking about Martin Neimoller, who was a Lutheran pastor in Nazi Germany, who wrote, "First they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me." That hit me like a ton of bricks on Friday when I read that. You see, over the past week, a couple of my videos, the one about the Tennessee Three and the question about a Texas judge being able to overturn an FDA approved drug, had a couple people asking me. I'm hoping that they were sincere, but they're quite critical of me speaking out about what they consider to be American politics when I am a Canadian. And one of them was on Facebook, and I came back and I wrote a very long, lengthy explanation, and nothing was commented. I don't even know if they read it, which is a shame because it really does explain what I was trying to say. But it really got me thinking about that sense of the role of criticism. First of all, anybody can criticize me. Go for it. I hope you do it respectfully. I mean, I hope that I would criticize you respectfully if I was. And if I wasn't, then you have every right not to listen to me. So if I don't listen to you because you're disrespectful, woohoo, no big deal. No skin off either one of our noses. But that's not what I'm trying to say. What I want to talk about is that quote, in the sense that who are we supposed to look at, take care of? In the Bible, Jesus tells the parable about the Good Samaritan. There's a man has been beaten and robbed, robbed and beaten, and he's been left to lay in a ditch alongside the road. And a Pharisee walks by and sees him, and thinks, well, no, if I touch him, I will be ritually unclean. So he goes and he crosses to the other side of the road. Not my problem. And then a Sadducee, same thing, sees him and leaves him there thinking, not my problem, and let somebody else take care of him. And then a Samaritan, arch enemy of the Jewish people, Samaritan walks by, sees this guy, and it's like, oh my heavens, what do I do? He picks him up, he puts him on his own donkey, takes him to an inn, cleans up his cuts and everything, gives the innkeeper money to take care of him, and says, listen, take care of him, feed him, doctor him, and when I come back, here's some money. When I come back, I'll pay you what I owe you, but take good care of him. The innkeeper has no expectation, has no inclination that the Samaritan isn't going to come back. He's been very generous, so he takes care of him. But this idea, then, Jesus said to the people when he told them that parable, he said, who is your neighbor? Because I think people listening to him would recognize that, wait a minute, is the ritual cleanness more important than saving a man's life? I mean, the rules are there, and the rules say this. But Jesus was always about the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law. He was very much about, were we created for the laws, or were the laws created for us? Are the laws of the land meant to dictate to us how we have to live? Or do we create laws that help us to live, that give us parameters within which we live, that keep us healthy and safe, that encourage us to be able to live our lives in a way, in a manner that allows us to do so safely and in a healthy way, in a way that everybody gets to live? And we're seeing an awful lot of lawmaking happening south of the border. And yeah, okay, yeah, it's in America. But the fact is that in Canada, especially in Alberta, I'm finding that there's a lot of those laws that, we're keeping a close eye on what happens down there, because if it flies down there, it might fly up here. A lot of people that want to make up their own rules. A lot of people that say, the government has no right to tell me what to do. When indeed, that's what governments do. They help to keep law and order. They help to keep us, in a position where we can all take care of each other. We take care of ourselves. If we had no law and order, look where we'd be. The Wild West all over again, with people shooting each other in the streets. Sometimes that happens. Um, but But these rules, like the Good Samaritan, like this idea that we look to the rules to give us some guidance. But the rules should be things that are the bare minimum standard. If the rule is that you don't run someone over with your car, then yeah, certainly don't run somebody over with your car. But stop at a stop sign, allow somebody to pass. Don't play chicken with them and make them guess whether or not you're going to stop or not. Like, the rules indicate that you have to stop to let them pass, or they're smart enough to watch you not watching, they'll wait till you leave. But the rules are there to establish those parameters. How do we work? And then we live within the rules to live healthy, meaningful, joyous, productive lives. And Niimoller, when he's talking about, they came for the Jews, but I was not a Jew. When we see the rules around us, the reason he had to say that was because the rules began to change. Until the first day the Jews were rounded up and taken away, the Jews also lived under the rules of Germany. They lived there, they had their lives, they had their businesses, their kids went to school, they had their bar mitzvahs and their bat mitzvahs, and they had Passover, and they did all the things that they did. No big deal. But then all of a sudden the rules started to change. The rules being created were no longer to support the people and create parameters within which the whole of society could live well. Those rules became rules that were power plays. People were making up rules that would benefit them, their people, their class. And soon those rules started, instead of being wide open and allowing people to be able to find ways to live, those rules started to come closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. And so they started choking the life out of people, choking the Jews to death, choking the homosexuals to death, choking the trade unionists to death, choking immigrants to death, people who didn't look like them, the gypsies, the Romanians to death, until finally the world looked on and said, no. It's okay for people to get frustrated because, I'm a Canadian talking about things happening in the States. But the fact is that at what point do we draw the barrier? Where is that boundary line? At what point do we really have the expectation that others will say, not my problem, not my fight, I'm not getting involved? If I start that, if I say, well, I'm Canadian and that's American, and that's their problem, then that waters down my ability to say to my own on my own Canadian soil, you can't do that. Or what happens if Americans decide that things have got just this is just an hyperbole, it's just an imagining thing, just a thought experiment again. What happens if Americans decide it's getting too hot under the collar for them to live there and they come to Canada? And then they start streaming across our border to say, we can't live there anymore. They're not letting us teach our children about slavery. They're not letting us teach our children about science. They're not letting us have the medicines that we need to preserve life. They're taking away our rights and our freedoms, things that we have always held for hundreds of years to be inherent rights that we have. They're taking those away. They're not asking, they're just taking, and they're making things illegal, and we want to come and live in your country. Well, okay. And then all of a sudden, Canada is overwhelmed with the same questions, because it will happen again, because those people in Canada who are of like minds and saying, who are you? You're not like me, so you can't come here. You can't stay here. You can't be here. And we'll see it happen. So yes, I am critical of what happens in the United States, because I'm critical of what happens in Italy and France and Germany and everywhere else, because what happens there will happen here. And the fact is that what I am critical about has got nothing to do with Americans. It's got nothing to do with any particular nationality. It's got to do with human beings treating or not treating other human beings with the dignity and respect that we are called as Christians to treat them as. It is my responsibility as a Christian, as a baptized person, not even just as Anglican, but as a baptized Christian, to treat every single human being with respect and dignity, to love my neighbor as myself, whether that neighbor is American or French or German or Italian or Canadian, whether they're Jewish or they're gay or trans, whether they're black or white or red or yellow, regardless of how they express their opinions, or how they feel about their own lives or how they feel about mine. Regardless, even if someone doesn't treat me as a neighbor, I don't have the right to turn around and treat them as a stranger. I still need to love my neighbor as myself, even if my neighbor doesn't love me as they love themselves. That's on me. So yeah, I am critical about stuff. It's not about you being American. It's not about you being you being from a different country or different than me or a different political party. It's all about the fact that we live in such a small world. The things that happen someplace else can definitely happen in my own backyard. And I don't want to be like Niimoller one day saying, they came for the Jews, but I was not a Jew, so I said nothing. I don't want to be that person who realizes that if they come for me, I didn't bother to stand up for someone else. Because it may seem extremist, but that's where we're heading, folks. We're heading to extremism. We're heading to hate instead of love. We need a revolution of hippies and flower children. We need people to scream out peace, not war. We need people to recognize that love, not hate, is the way to go. And right now, it doesn't feel very much like we're doing that. So you know what? Yeah, I'm going to be critical. I'm going to speak out because I don't want to realize when I'm looking at someone else being hurt, when I'm looking at someone else being challenged, I don't want to look them in the eye and have to realize and look myself in the face in the mirror and say, you didn't do a thing. You stood by and you watched it happen. I can't do that. How about you? Have a good day. God bless. And I'll see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel.